Hey everyone, my name is Keon and I am an NASM certified personal trainer and I'm going to be taking you through this fitness workshop today. The workshop we have for today is a stretching, flexibility, and mobility workshop. And basically I'm going to define the three main types of flexibility, what their purpose is, some exercises that fall into each category, and basically when and for what reason you should be doing each of these different types of mobility work. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. The three main types of flexibility are corrective flexibility, active flexibility, and functional flexibility. Um, Basically, each of these three different types of flexibilities, they have different strategies. They have the similar and different strategies for stretching for both of them. For starters, they all include doing what's known as self-myofascial release, or SMR, and this is basically just foam rolling. If you've ever had one of those foam rollers that you roll your muscles over, or if you've ever used a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball to roll a certain muscle or had a massage even, it's all basically the same thing. You're all releasing the adhesions in your muscles, basically. All three of these types of flexibility include this foam rolling or SMR. So I'm going to take you through how to do that the proper way and when to do it. And First, I'm going to get started though with corrective flexibility. So the purpose of corrective flexibility is to increase the joint range of motion, improve muscle imbalances, and correct altered joint motion. So basically, this just means that you're going to stretch or correct overactive or tight muscles, basically. Um, so like I said, it includes the foam rolling or SMR, but it also includes static stretching. Now, static stretching is what most people probably associate with stretching. It's that um, like that old um, traditional stretching where you take a muscle to its um, tension point and you just hold it there for 30 seconds or a minute, however long people have told you to do it for and whatnot. So that's static stretching. Um, I'm going to show you actually a good amount of exercises for static stretching. Um, but before I do that, I want to touch on the other types of flexibility, and then we can get into some exercises. So, like I said, static stretching is just a typical um, take your muscle to its tension point, hold it for 30 seconds, a minute or 2 minutes, however long. Um, 30 seconds is usually the recommended amount of time, the minimum at least that's needed to kind of release that tension. And then as far as foam rolling goes, the idea behind foam rolling is that you have, if your muscles are tight, you have these little knots or adhesions in your muscle, and basically you applying pressure to it can release that tension or release that adhesion. So it's the same concept basically behind getting a massage, or have you ever had one of those massage guns that like you put on your arm and it vibrates up and down? Kind of the same idea here. And I'm gonna in a minute show you how to properly do that. But the next type of flexibility is known as active flexibility. And active flexibility and also the third type, functional flexibility, both have the same purpose. So the purpose of both active flexibility and functional flexibility is basically to improve tissue extensibility and increase neuromuscular efficiency. So what tissue extensibility is basically just the ability of your soft tissue to be extended or stretched. And then neuromuscular efficiency is basically the ability of your body's ability to recruit muscle fibers. And so specifically with active flexibility, again, this includes foam rolling or SMR, and it also includes what's known as active isolated stretching. So in contrast to static stretching, active isolated stretching includes taking a muscle to its tension point, holding for like 1 to 2 seconds, and then releasing. and then repeating that multiple times, usually around 10 to 15 times, instead of just taking the muscle there and holding it for, like I said, 30 seconds to a minute, as with static stretching. So the idea behind this is that only holding the muscle at this tension point for 1 to 2 seconds avoids triggering the body's natural defense mechanism when it feels like it's being overstretched. And some believe that this can actually be beneficial to the body in terms of how much nutrients reach the muscles and whatnot. So just to recap, active isolated stretching is basically just the same thing as static stretching, except you're not holding the muscle. You're going to the point of tension for a second, maybe 2 seconds, and then backing off, and then going again, and then backing off, instead of just holding for an extended period of time. And so the exercises that I show you for static stretching basically can just be applied to active isolated stretching, except instead of holding, you just continually repeat through the cycle. And I'll go through that with you. And then the third type of flexibility that we have is functional flexibility. Again, like I said earlier, its purpose is also to improve tissue extensibility and neuromuscular efficiency. And it includes foam rolling as well. And here we actually also use what's called dynamic stretching. So dynamic stretching basically involves contracting a muscle and taking it through its full range of motion in order to basically prime it for later movements, or essentially like wake the muscle up. So if you're going to be doing, for example, maybe a leg day, and you want your glutes and your quads to be working optimally, you want them to be properly warmed up, and you want your body to recruit as many muscle fibers as possible so that you can move the weight as efficiently as possible, then you want to do certain warm-up exercises or warm-up stretches, dynamic stretches that kind of wake those muscles up. And I'll be taking you through some of those as well. So with that said, I'm going to first get into how to properly foam roll, since foam roll or SMR is part of each of these three different types of flexibilities. And then after that, we're going to go into some specifics for each type of flexibility, and then when to do each. So with that said, let's get right into it. So I have a foam roller behind me here. And so with foam rolling, the idea is that you want to find a spot on your body that it feels very tender. So, or basically what's called a hot spot, I guess you could say. It's basically a point where when you apply pressure to it, it kind of hurts. And so the idea is, I'm going to show you, I'm just going to demonstrate it on my quad for you. So I'm going to put the foam roller below me, and I'm going to lay on my quad. I'm going to show you this way. So the idea is you want to find a spot that's kind of tender, kind of painful, and you want to just kind of hold it there. You either hold it there or you just rock back very slowly to release that tension. Now you probably, it's recommended that at least 30 seconds. I typically like to do it for 2 minutes, but you can do however much you wish. I just have always done 2 minutes, and I feel like that works well for me. But 30 seconds is the minimum amount of time required to release that knot in your muscle. So, like I said, you can find that hot spot. I have one right here, and I'm just going to sit on it, rock back and forth slowly. What you don't want to do is find that spot and just go up and down really quick, mashing every area of your muscle like this. That's not what you want to do. You want to find that spot, nice and controlled, and roll over it like that. 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Now, one thing that I recommend for foam rolling is that if you're going to be doing foam rolling or any type of stretching, really, it's actually probably beneficial to do the foam rolling first to release those knots in your muscle, and then to do stretching for that muscle afterwards. So, for example, with the quad foam rolling that I just did, I could do that foam rolling 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and then afterwards I could do a static quad stretch, or I could foam roll my calves for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and then afterwards do a static calf stretch, for example. But with that said, I'm going to show you some static stretches here. Okay, so first stretch I got for you is going to be the kneeling hip flexor stretch. So you're gonna get into kind of like a lunge position with your leg on the ground. You're gonna keep your core tight here, and you just kind of lean into your leg like this. So here, starting, you just lean into it like this. You'll feel a nice stretch right here in your hip flexor region, and you can even make it more intense by raising your arms and kind of leaning to one side or the other like this. Yeah, you couldn't see that, but you can make it more intense by kind of leaning to one side or leaning to the other. But the idea is here, again, just lean into it like this, knee is on the ground, and hold for 30 seconds. Okay. If this is uncomfortable for your back knee, what you could do is you could put a towel, a pillow, or any type of cushion below your knee. So for example, I have a pillow right here. If you need to do that, just put your pillow on the ground, and that's much more comfortable for the kneecap. And you can just sit there and hold that for 30 seconds. Okay, so that's our first stretch. Our next stretch is going to be the doorway or door frame hamstring stretch. So there are a lot of different types of hamstring stretches out there, at least static hamstring stretches. You've probably seen them all, where you're standing up, bending over, trying to touch your toes, or you're laying on the ground, like sitting on the ground and doing this, or touching your toes in this way. I don't like those stretches because you kind of have to round your lower back in order to do them, and that's not necessarily a good thing for most people. So what I like to do is I like to find a door, open the door like this, and basically you're going to put one leg into the door, scoot your butt all the way up to the frame, and then put your leg up like this. And you're gonna hold this. I like to hold this for a minute to 2 minutes, and you're just gonna hang out here. Get your butt as close to the door frame as possible. My butt is touching the door frame right now. You want to press your lower back into the ground and just stretch. Something you can do to make this stretch more intense for your hamstring is at the same time you can contract your quad muscle right here. So you contract that quad, and now you feel an even greater stretch on your hamstring. Okay. And now you can just hold that there 30 seconds to 2 minutes, however long you want, or however long feels good for you. And then you switch sides. Now, obviously, you can't do both legs on like the same side of the door. So if you do your left leg here, you're gonna have to go onto this side and do your right leg, or you find a different door frame. But that's a really good hamstring stretch, one of my favorites, and one that I highly recommend. Now, another quad or hip flexor stretch that I do sometimes is a rear foot elevated quad stretch. So basically, you're going to find a bed, a bench, a table, anything that's elevated. You're gonna put your foot back like this, like you're setting up for a split squat. And basically what you're gonna do is just go down into it. And this is gonna stretch your quad and your hip flexors. If you go a little bit, if you find a surface that's more elevated, like maybe a table or something, you're probably gonna hit your quad a little bit more. So for example, if I go here, this is my table. I could put my foot up here, and that's a really good quad stretch right there. You want to keep your core tight, try not to round that lower back, and just hold this for 30 seconds to 2 minutes. But yeah, with most of these static stretches, I recommend doing 3 sets of 30 seconds. There are a few of them that I like holding for longer. For example, the Doorframe hamstring stretch, I like doing that one for 2 minutes. There's a couple other that I like holding for longer than 30 seconds. When they come up, I'll specifically mention those. But for most of these stretches, I'm just gonna do a simple 3 sets of 30 on each side. We can move on to the standing adductor stretch. So your adductor muscles are these muscles on the inside of your thighs right here. Okay, and so basically what you want to do is kind of lean one way, and you feel a stretch right here. Hold that for 30 seconds, and you can lean the other way. Feel a stretch right in there. Hold that for 30 seconds, and then that's a good stretch for your adductors. The next stretch, one of my personal favorite stretches, is just sitting in a deep squat. Okay, so you guys find a squat stance that's comfortable for you. I like to go wide with my feet pointed out. If you like to go narrow with your feet straight or narrow with your feet wide, or whatever works for you is fine, in my opinion. And what you're gonna do, you're just gonna squat down and just sit there and hold that. I like to hold this for a minute. You can even put your arms or your elbows inside your knees and try and push out and just hold it. And try to go as deep as you can. If at the beginning you can only go this deep, that's as far as you can go and hold it for, that's fine. As you become more flexible, more mobile, you can eventually get deeper and deeper and be able to hold this. Now, you can notice that right now my back and my lower back and my butt are kind of rounding a little bit. This is called a butt wink. If you're squatting with a lot of weight on your back, or with any weight on your back really, this is not the best thing for you to do. It can lead to back pain. When you're just doing a simple body weight exercise like this, you're just stretching, I don't think it should be much of an issue. So I like to just sit as deep as I can. Something you can try to do to avoid it is really just sit back, pull your shoulder blades back, and just sit there for a minute. So that's just sitting in a deep squat. I do that for a minute at a time. I was recommended to do this by a pretty famous physical therapist. He was helping me online, and he recommended that not only me, but everybody try to sit in a deep squat position for at least 10 minutes a day. So whenever I'm watching TV or doing something that doesn't require much attention, I'd like to sit in a deep squat, time myself for a minute, take a break, come back later, do another minute, and try throughout the day to accumulate 10 minutes of sitting in that deep squat. And it may be hard to remember at first, but eventually you can do it, because it really is a great stretch, because it's going to stretch out your calves. It's going to improve your ankle mobility when you're in that deep squat position. It's going to improve your quad mobility and flexibility. It's going to improve your hip flexibility. So it's really an all-around great stretch. The next stretch I'm going to show you is a hip stretch. So it's just a simple figure 4. So it's called a figure 4 because you put one leg on the other like this. Now what you can do is put that leg here, and you can already start to feel a stretch in your glute. Let me show you the other side. So put your leg like this, you can already start to feel a stretch here. Once you lift it up, you feel an even greater stretch. And what you could do is you can grab your other leg and pull it towards your chest. And now you feel a really great stretch right along here on your hip. And you're just gonna hold that for 30 seconds, switch, and do the same. You can also do this on a bed or on a chair. So if you're seated, put your one leg up, and you kind of want to lean into it and also push down the leg that's crossed at the same time, and hold that for 30 seconds. So on the other side, what this looks like is pushing down here, and I'm leaning into it, and you're going to feel a nice stretch right here along your glute medius and your outer thigh. And you're just going to hold these positions for 30 seconds again. So those are a couple of good stretches. You can also do another hip stretch called the Piriformis Stretch. Going to be a similar position to what I was just showing you. You're going to lay back. You're going to lay back. Bring this knee up, or bring one knee up, and basically just pull it up to your opposite chest. You should feel a stretch along here. And hold that for 30. Here's the opposite leg to the opposite chest. And hold that for 30. And those are pretty good hip stretches. Now we can do some calf stretching. There are various options to do here. I'm going to show you one that you can do at the wall, any wall in your house. So here's a wall I have here. Basically, you're going to put 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, and you just kind of lean into it. And you're going to feel a stretch right along here in your gastroc. So stretch, basically try and keep your foot planted, but try and basically touch your knee to the wall is a good way to think about it. And you should feel a stretch there. Okay. And opposite foot, lean into it like that and hold for 30. Another option that offers a really good stretch, but people often have pain with, is a foot elevated calf stretch. So basically, I have my bed here. You could do it on any surface, but you're just gonna put your foot on it and lean into it like this. You feel a nice stretch here. The problem with this is your knee is getting really compressed in this position, and it's going over your toes a lot. So if you have knee issues or you have bad knees to begin with, this might not be the best option for you. I know personally I have a lot of pain in my knee, my left knee, when I do this stretch, so I don't ever do it. But if you don't have any pain, that's a great option for you. And the last stretch you could do for your calves is, if you have a staircase in your house or your apartment or wherever, you can basically just go to the staircase, hold on to a railing or something on your side, and basically put the balls of your feet at the edge of the staircase and just lower yourself down, okay? And just hold that position for 30 seconds. And that's a good calf stretch. It's something that I've done in the past. Also, with that though, I've noticed in the past that sometimes it can irritate the balls of my feet, like the bunion area. So if you have bunions or you have feet issues, maybe that's not the best one for you, and you should probably stick to the wall stretch. But I wanted to give you a few different options so that you could decide for yourself. Okay, so those are the leg stretches, lower body stretches that I have for you. Now I'm going to show you a few upper body stretches. The first stretch that I'm going to show you is just a simple door frame lat stretch. So I'm going to put this here. You're basically, again, just going to find a doorway, like here, open the door, obviously. You're going to grab the door frame, and basically just pull on it and sit back, and you should feel a stretch all along your lat here. Okay, pull and just sit back, and then hold that for 30. And you can play around with different heights. You can go lower, you could go higher up to try and hit different areas in your lat. And then you can switch sides and do it with the other arm. That's a really good one for your lat. One that I like to do for the muscles that surround my spine is this seated back stretch. So basically you're gonna get like this, gonna cross one foot over, okay, one leg over, opposite arm goes here, and you're just going to rotate like this and hold this for 30 seconds. Okay, so what this looks like on the other side, so this is my left leg, cross over my left leg over my right, put my right elbow on the outside of my left knee, and twist, and really force yourself to try and go straight. Try to make your torso parallel, basically. And just hold that for 30 seconds. It's a really good stretch for muscles that surround your spine here. Another stretch we can do, and those are a couple that I do for the back. I do one more back stretch, and this is just a simple child's pose. If you've ever done yoga or something, I think they do this in yoga. But just a child's pose, you're gonna put your arms out front, and you're just gonna sit back into your bottom, into your butt, and just chill here for 30 seconds. You want to try and sit down as far back as you possibly can, like so. If you can only go here to begin with, that's fine, but eventually you want to be able to sit back as far as possible. Okay, and something you can actually do to hit slightly different regions of your back is you start here in the middle, and you could keep your feet straight and just tilt your torso. Now this is gonna hit your lat on this side. Hold that for 30. And you can do the same thing, reach over here, and it's going to hit your lat on this side. And hold that for 30. Okay. Now I'm going to show you a few chest stretches. I haven't had a lot of success myself with chest stretches. I feel like I can never actually feel them in my chest. So I'm gonna hopefully show you a few variations, and I'm hoping one of them will work for you. But basically, you can do a couple in the doorway. So you find a door, put your arm at an angle. Here, let me show you from the back, it might be easier. So you're gonna put your arm at like an L position, like this. And basically you want to like rotate away from that arm. Okay, and you should feel a stretch in your pec. What this looks like on the other side is you make it L and rotate away from that arm. And you should feel a stretch right along here. What you can do this is more of the pec major region. If you want to hit the pec minor, which is your upper chest area and runs along your shoulder as well, you could try putting your arm a little bit higher and rotating. And see if that hits that region for you. Personally, I don't really like the single arm version. I like going both arms at once, taking a staggered stance, so one foot in front of the other, keeping that core tight so you don't round your lower back too much, and just leaning into it like this. So what that looks like, I can't show you from this side really, but basically what you're going to do is you're just going to keep your arms up and just lean into it like this. And again, you can put your arms up higher to try and hit more of that upper chest area and just lean into it. Something to be cognizant of is that with these door frame stretches, especially the single arm doorway pec stretch, it's very easy to accidentally over torque it and injure your shoulder doing so, which is one of the reasons why I don't like these stretches that much. So if you're going to do those stretches, be aware of that. And it's also why I prefer the double arm stretch. So that's something to be aware of. Another stretch you can do for your chest is a simple foam roller. Get a foam roller. You just want to lay back on it like this and just have your arms at the side. I'm going to show you from this angle. So lay back on it and just have your arms at the side and open up that chest. If your chest is really tight, you might feel this. For me personally, I don't feel it. Something I like to do is I like to grab a couple of dumbbells, very lightweight. These are 3 pounds here, but I prefer to do it with 5 pounds. Something also to be aware of, see, I went up too high on this and now my neck is not supported. So try and find a place where your head and neck are supported so you don't hurt your neck. And then you just do the same stretch, but with dumbbells in your hands. And you basically want to just let your hands hover above the ground, because if you let them drop all the way and you let the weights touch the ground, you're basically doing the same thing that you were doing without any dumbbells in your hands. So let your arms hover above the ground and you'll feel an amazing stretch in your pecs this way. This is my favorite variation of a pec stretch, and this is probably the one that I recommend the most. So you have your arms out like here. You can change the way your arms are positioned to hit different regions of your chest again. So I had my arms in like this Y position. You can bring your arms in a little bit closer. Start making a W or an L with your arms, and you can hit different regions of your chest. And it's important on this to not go too heavy on the dumbbells so that you don't hurt your shoulders. This is an amazing stretch for me, and I hold this for 30 seconds as well. Okay. And those are some stretches that I do for my pecs. Like I said, they're not amazing stretches. Hopefully one of them works for you. It took me a while to figure out one that did, but now that I have, it's worked wonders for me. Okay. Okay, now another stretch that I want to show you will be for your forearms. I can do this up at the desk here. So humans, we type and text all day, every day, and our forearms can be really tight. So something that you want to do for your wrist flexors and your wrist extensors. So this is a wrist extensor stretch. You're just gonna push push your hand back like this and just go as far as you can and hold that for 30 seconds. And then you're gonna go the other way. And you could either do it this way and have your hand flat like this and pull. I personally like to make a fist. So I make a fist and pull like that. And that really intensifies the stretch for me. So you make a fist and you pull back and you hold that for 30 seconds. And you should feel that all along here. And the other one, you should feel right along here. And these are your wrist extensors. These are your wrist flexors. So you have this stretch and this stretch for your wrists. I really like those too. And then I'm going to show you a few stretches for your neck. So if you have neck problems, you can use these stretches to hopefully alleviate some of that pain. But basically, the first one I'm going to show you is the upper trap stretch. So what you're going to do is you're going to basically try to touch your ear to your shoulder. So you're going to go like this, try to touch your ear to your shoulder. And if this stretch isn't very intense, what you can do is very lightly just pull down with your hand. Hold that for 30 seconds. That's your upper trap stretch. If you want to do your levator scap stretch, you can look down into your armpit, basically, like this, and hold that there. If this isn't intense enough, you can try and pull your head down just very lightly. Sometimes this is called the Michael Jackson stretch, just because of the position that it's in. And so this is your levator scap stretch. And then your third stretch I want to show you for your neck is a scalene stretch. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to try and look up and away and then pull down on the opposite side around your collarbone area. So for this scalene right here, you're going to look up and away and you're going to pull down. And you should feel a little pull right in this area. And same thing here, up and away, and you pull down. Okay. And the last stretch, last static stretch I'm going to show you is just classic arm across body stretch. Good for your shoulder. And you're just going to hold this for 30 seconds. And again, arm cross, and you're just going to pull it like that. And hold that for 30. And so all of these I've shown you here so far should hit most of the main muscle groups in your body. I did not show any stretches for your bicep or tricep. I can show you one for each. I don't really feel like they need to be stretched that much, but if you want to, your triceps are tight, do your overhead tricep stretch. So basically you put one arm behind your head and you just pull down like this. You feel a nice stretch along there for your tricep. And then your bicep is a little bit harder to stretch, but basically what you're gonna do, you wanna find an elevated surface. Just make this kind of even. You're gonna find an elevated surface like this. Basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna put your arm behind you on the surface and just like lean back into it. And it's not a very good stretch and it's hard to demonstrate because I can't get out of the way for this, but you basically have your arm back and you just kind of lean into it a little bit. Not a very great stretch. The biceps are kind of hard muscle group to stretch, but good news is that most people don't have super tight biceps, I don't think. and they don't really affect your posture poorly if you do, at least not as heavily as maybe having a tight pec or tight back might affect your posture. So there's probably some better stretches out there for triceps and biceps. I probably wouldn't worry too much about those. I'd focus more on stretching your legs, your pecs especially, and your back, just to keep that posture nice and straight and not rounded forward like this. So those are the static stretches. Now I'm going to get into some active isolated stretches, and I'm not going to go through all of these because, like I said, they're basically just the exact same thing as the static stretches, but they're, instead of a 30-second hold, it's a 2-second hold. So for example, I'm going to show you with the wrist stretch. So instead of here holding for 30 seconds, right, for active isolated stretching, you're going to go hold 1, 2, back, hold 1, 2, back, hold 1, 2, back. Okay, and for this one, you're just gonna hold 1, 2, and release. You hold 1, 2, and release. So you get the idea. So maybe for something like kneeling hip flexor stretch, you would get into your stretch position and you go stretch 1, 2, and you go back. You stretch 1, 2, and you go back. You stretch 1, 2, and back. So the idea is you do that for all of your stretches instead of holding them for the extended 30 seconds to a minute or 2 minutes, if that's how long you're doing those other ones. Again, the benefit is that it doesn't activate the body's defense mechanism, and it should hopefully provide more nutrients to your muscles instead of static stretching, or in contrast to static stretching. But again, I'll get into when and why you should do these different types of stretches at the end, once I've finished demonstrating all the remaining stretches. Now, the remaining stretches we have are the functional stretches, the functional flexibility. And so functional flexibility, like I mentioned earlier, includes dynamic stretching. And so what dynamic stretching is, again, just to review, is basically taking a muscle through its entire range of motion and priming it for exercises later on. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you a few exercises that kind of prepare your muscles to do work. So something I like to do before all of my heavy lifting days are, so for example, if I'm doing a bench press one day, I'll do push-ups in my warm-up. Or if I'm doing back squats one day on my leg day, I'll do body weight air squats before I get into using any sort of weight. And so what these do is they really prime your muscles to be working optimally during the actual lift. So for example, I'll do push-ups. I like to do my push-ups on my knuckles just because it's nicer on my wrist. You can do it flat if you want, but I'll get into a push-up position. I like to widen my feet a little bit. I don't like to have my feet together. I like to go a little bit wider so that I can squeeze my glutes like this and really squeeze my abs, as you should, because you don't want your lower back to look like this when you're doing a push-up. You want it to be nice and straight. And then what I especially like to do when I'm doing these basically resistance exercises, but we're using them as a stretch, and what I want to do is I want to over exaggerate the eccentric portion of this movement. So the eccentric portion is the portion of the lift where the muscle is lengthening under weight. So for a push-up, it's going to be the downward position, or the position where you're going down. So I like to go nice and slow. And then I even like to pause at the bottom for 1 to 2 seconds and then push back up as fast as I can. And so what this ends up being is like 3 seconds on the way down, 1 to 2 seconds pause at the bottom, and then you push back up. Okay, so I'm gonna show you this one more time. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then push back up. And I'll do that 5 to maybe 10, usually not 10 times, around 5 times, to really get all the muscles in my chest, my anterior deltoids, my triceps really primed and ready to do heavy weights. So we can use that same principle for a squat pattern. So again, find a squat stance that works for you. Okay. And then you're gonna push your knees out as you go down, but basically you're gonna go down slow. 1, 2, 3, get to the bottom. And you wanna hold here. 1, 2, and then back up. 1, 2, 3, hold. 1, 2, back up. So the idea here is that really forcing the slowed eccentric is really going to activate a lot of these muscle fibers of your quads, your glutes, so that when you get to doing the heavier weight or just whatever exercise you're doing, whether it be in sprinting or a sport, all of these muscle fibers are properly being recruited. So that's what I like to do before squatting. What I also like to do before squatting is a simple glute bridge here. So you're gonna lay on your back, knees bent, feet flat on the ground. You're gonna squeeze your abs. And you're just gonna thrust up, and you're gonna hold and really squeeze your glutes. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze for 5 to 10 seconds, and then slowly lower yourself down, and then quickly back up, squeeze and hold 5 to 10 seconds, and slowly lower yourself down. Now again, what I use this for is not necessarily to build muscle, but basically just to make sure that all my muscles are firing properly, so that when I'm going on to more complex, heavier movements, the muscles that are supposed to be working and are supposed to be turned on are actually turning on, so that I can lift most efficiently. So here, same idea. We're going to use a lunge as a stretching mechanism. So if you've seen a lunge before, or if you haven't seen a lunge before, basically put one foot forward and you're just gonna go down like this and then back up. So with this lunge, I'll probably do a nice slow 1, 2, 3, hold the bottom 1, and then you can walk and do the next one. Sorry, trying to look at the camera, fell over. You're gonna walk 1, 2, 3, 1, and then come back up. And then you're just gonna do that. One. Now, you don't necessarily have to do these with a very controlled eccentric. It's still technically giving you a stretch if you do it quickly. So if you want to just bust out a lunge like that, you can do that. Okay. I just prefer doing it slowly. 1, so that I can work on my form before I move on to heavier weight, and 2, so that I can really feel the contraction of all the muscles that are there. So I recommend it, but you don't have to. And I forgot to mention with lunges, I like to coach not letting the knee touch the ground. So I don't want your knee to hit. I want you to go right above. Okay, so like right there, not touching, but just almost. Another dynamic stretching exercise that I'd suggest doing is just a classic Romanian deadlift. So a Romanian deadlift is basically you're going to body weight, go down and try to touch your feet, slight bend in the knees. Most of the action is from your glutes. This is known as a hip hinge. So how you're going to do this is you're going to stick your butt out like that. So it's not a squat where you go down. You're going to hinge at the hip. So you see the subtle difference there? So this is a squat. This is a hinge. And you're going to have a slight bend. And you're just going to try and touch. You don't have to touch for a Romanian deadlift. But you want to try and get there. You're going to feel a nice stretch in your hamstrings. And you're going to contract with your glutes to come up. Difference between a Romanian deadlift and a classic conventional deadlift is basically you're not really going all the way down to the ground. But this isn't a video for deadlifting techniques, so I'm not going to go too much into that. But basically what I want you to do, like I said, is just find your foot stance about shoulder width apart, maybe a little bit wider, and just sit back, keep your abs tight, and bend down and really feel that stretch in your hamstrings. Okay, now what I want to do, so also I showed you for you notice like some of these stretches are basically just calisthenic movements or body weight exercises, and that's what a lot of dynamic stretching is basically. So another thing you could do is if you're trying to warm up your back, for example, you could do pull-ups. And so you grab the bar and bring yourself to the top and hold that position for 1 second to 2 seconds, and then slowly lower yourself down. Obviously, I don't have a pull-up bar here, so I can't show you that. But if that's what you want to do, you could do that too, to really warm up your lats especially, but the muscles of your back. Now, the rest of these exercises I'm going to show you are not necessarily like resistance exercises, but they still are somewhat like these others exercises where you're going through a full range of motion. I'm going to show you what's called the world's greatest stretch. It's really actually called this, and it's called that because it activates or it stretches so many parts of your body. So what you're going to do is you're going to get into a lunge position. Okay, get into a lunge like this. Have one hand on the ground, flat or on your knuckles, and you're basically going to try and reach through, and you're going to be pushing your knee out to the side. So basically you're going to be pushing your knee out like this, and you're going to try and reach through here. And if you can't reach through like this, you can just try and touch your forearm or your elbow to the ground until you can eventually go like that. And then you're going to reach up and twist. And at each spot, hold for 3 to 5 seconds. And then back up. And what that looks like on the other side. So, hand down, lunge position, drive your knee out. And I'm much more stiff on this side. I probably can't get that. And then open up and hold. Now, this stretch is a workout in and of itself. It's very tough, but it's also very good. So that's the world's greatest stretch. I'm going to show you what are called wig wags. Okay, so you're going to lay on your back as such. And basically what you want to do is just roll side to side like this. Try to keep your upper back on the ground, always touching. And you're just going to go side to side. Go for 20 times each side. And if you can only go here to begin with, that's fine. As you become more mobile and your lower back warms up, you should eventually be able to go all the way, and that's a wig wag. Okay. Another exercise that I like to do is called threading the needle. So if you have a foam roller, you could do a thread the needle. You don't necessarily need one. I'll show you in a second how to do it without it, but a foam roller is a nice addition. Basically, you put it on one side, arm on the other, and you're gonna put your hand on like this, and you're just gonna roll it and go through like that, and then come back and roll it. And I like to hold for a second or two and come back and roll it and come back, and you could do it on both sides. I do 10 to 20 on both sides like that. Now, if you don't have a foam roller, you just do the same movement without it, but it's not as nice. So you just go here and out. And you can even throw in a little twist at the top. Reach for the sky. Okay. All right. So those are called thread the needle. So those are good stretches or mobility work for your back. I'm gonna show you two more exercises. These are gonna be hip swings. One of these is called a hip swing, and you can do this in multiple directions. So basically, a hip swing is just exactly what it sounds like. You're just gonna find a wall, and you're just going to swing your hips back and forth. Okay, just like this. Try and get as high as you can. You should really open up your hips. You can also do it inside or front and back, basically. So I'm doing this inside of the door here, but basically you just go front and back. Okay, and you could do that for 30 seconds as well, both ways, or you could go for actual reps if you'd like. I'd probably do it for just 30 seconds to a minute on each side just to warm everything up. And now the last functional flexibility exercise I'm going to show you is called, or I call it, an up and over. It's for your shoulders. It's my favorite shoulder mobility, shoulder stretching exercise that I do every day. Really helps with tight shoulders and opening up your chest too. So basically you're going to find anything that you can hold on to. I prefer a resistance band if you have one, just so you can pull it apart a little bit when you're going up and over. But you can do this with PVC pipe if you have that. You can do it with a broomstick. You can do it with a mop. You can do it with a tree branch that if it fell outside or something. Just get creative with it. But I prefer you have a resistance band, because what you're going to do is start off by your belly button, lower stomach area. You're just going to go up, reach back, and go over. And then that's one total rep, and you're going to do that. I do this 12 to 15 times, 3 sets. That's what it looks like here. Up and over. Now the reason I like the resistance band is because when you're going up here and trying to go behind your neck, you kind of need to pull it apart a little bit just to get that extra range of motion. With a fixed stick or pipe or whatever, it's a little bit tougher to get that over and up position unless you have very, very mobile shoulders, which I'm willing to bet most people don't have unless you work on this a lot. But that is one of my personal favorite stretching exercises for the shoulders, and I highly recommend that you all do that one. So now those are the exercises that I um, wanted to show you today. Actually, I'm going to show you a couple more that I forgot to mention. So with the lunge, I showed you just in one plane. I just showed you the classic sagittal plane lunge, so going forward. But you can also do lunges instead of forward. You can do side lunges like this. Okay, side lunges to also warm up your legs like that. Okay, you can also do lunges in the transverse plane, which involves a bit of rotation. So instead of just going straight forward, you kind of twist and then go down. Okay, you twist and then go down. So it seems similar to a traditional lunge, but it's the added twist there makes it a little bit more challenging and introduces a new stimulus. So it's something you could also do to warm up your legs. And one thing before I move on that I forgot to mention as well, if you don't have dumbbells and you want to do that foam roll pec stretch that I showed you, where you're laying on the foam roll with the dumbbells behind you like that, just get creative with it. You could use water bottles, fill those up with water, hold those in your hands. You can use books, magazines, anything that has, or not magazines, books, purses, anything that has weight to it, you just hold in your hands, keep them out behind you, and that'll work. So now I want to talk about when to use each of these different types of stretches. So um, I know that it's in the past, I know like in high school sports, a lot of coaches preach doing static stretching before a sporting event, and a lot of maybe trainers, at least trainers of the past, would suggest stretching before you work out and you lift weights. Recent research is actually against doing static stretching before any type of exercise, really, because when you take a muscle and you, for example, this wrist stretch, you take a muscle and you hold it there for 30 seconds to a minute, or you're doing a quad stretch and you hold it for 30 seconds to a minute, research has shown that it actually it changes the length of the muscle. Obviously, that's what we're trying to do, but because it does that, it actually decreases the amount of contractile force that the muscle has for up to 30 minutes or even longer during your workout. So what this means is that if you stretch statically before before lifting weights, before any type of sporting event or anything, you're actually going to likely decrease your performance because your muscles won't be able to contract as strongly as they would if you didn't stretch. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that you should still stretch before you work, but it's the type of stretching that you do that's important. So you want to do that active isolated stretching instead. You want to do that dynamic stretching instead. So you want to do the stretches where you hold for a second and you release, hold for a second, release, and you do that a bunch of times instead of just holding for 30 seconds, right? Or you want to do if you're doing a chest day, you want to do your push-ups, your tempo push-ups before you do your bench instead of going to a door frame and holding that stretch for 30 seconds, because that's going to decrease the ability of your chest muscles to contract. So maybe you can't push as much weight as you would like to. So I personally, I never statically stretch before a workout. I always do my active isolated and dynamic stretches before our workouts. So I'm always doing, like I said, squats and glute bridges and that type of stuff before a leg day to get those muscles firing and the blood pumping to the legs. I don't do any of that static stretching. I only do static stretching after I'm done with a workout. So once I've finished lifting weights or I've finished uh, playing a sport with my friends or whatever, that's when I'll go and I'll hold the muscle for 30 seconds to a minute and whatnot. And even or even do it on just a completely different day. Maybe you worked out one day and then the next day is your rest day, and that's the day you do your stretching, your static stretching. That could also work. But moral of the point or the story is that basically, if you're going to work out, whether it's lift weights, go on a run, play a sport, especially, um, honestly, for me, I would just avoid doing static stretching before any type of physical activity, because you're going to need muscle contraction for pretty much anything you do, even if it's just walking or running, but especially if you're playing a sport or lifting weights. So static stretching after a workout or on a separate day, dynamic and active isolated stretching before a workout to warm up and get those proper muscle fiber contractions, basically. Um, I already mentioned how to properly foam roll. Um, so, like I said, you want to slowly go over those adhesions, not just mash away at the muscle really crazy and fast. And also, maybe doing it before you do your static stretching is a decent idea, if you'd like. And last thing I want to talk about is, don't just stretch to stretch. If your muscle doesn't actually feel tight, then it might not be in your best interest to actually stretch. You know, people tell you you need to stretch every day, but if your muscles don't feel tight, it's a possibility, it's a highly probable that they're probably not tight, you know? And so stretching them is just going to continue to over lengthen an already lengthened muscle, which is going to be counterproductive for what you want to do. If your muscles feel tight, then yeah, go ahead and stretch them. If they don't feel tight, I would say it's probably not needed to stretch it. Um, but I'll leave that up to you guys if you feel like you need to stretch in order to be able to do a certain movement. And this is going back to static stretching for a workout. If you absolutely feel like you need to do some static stretching in order to be able to get properly into a deep squat position before a workout or something like that, um, then I'll leave that up to you. You go ahead and do that if it makes you more comfortable and you feel like it's going to help you, then go for it. But if your muscles don't feel tight, I'd say it's probably not in your best interest to go ahead and continue stretching. And along with that, don't just aimlessly stretch your muscles to fix issues. If you have pain in certain joints or certain muscle groups, um, and you've been stretching religiously, you're doing your stretches every day for weeks and months on end, and you're not getting any relief, that may be a sign that the muscle isn't actually overactive and in need of stretching, but it could indicate that you have other muscular imbalances elsewhere that are kind of causing that pain sensation. And for example, um, a lot of people have chronically tight hamstrings, and they think that stretching their hamstrings is the key to um, obviously lengthening the hamstring and reducing that pain sensation and that tension. And they do it every day, multiple times a day for however long, and they don't get any relief. And what can actually happen is that it's possible that they have their glute muscles and their ab muscles and their lower back muscles are weak, and because of that, their lower back is constantly in a rounded position because these muscles are all weak. And so what they find is once you strengthen these glutes, strengthen these abs, strengthen that back, you can straighten this back, and the pain goes away, because what happens is that when your back is rounded like that, it actually puts your hamstrings in a position, um, in a position of greater tension. So there's more tension on the muscle like that. And so they think that stretching the hamstring is going to fix that, but it won't, because those muscles are all weak. So what I'm trying to say is stretch if it helps. If it doesn't, don't just continue to do it for no reason. Look at other things. If you need to, I'd suggest see a physical therapist or a doctor if you've been stretching for a while and you see it's not doing anything. And that basically that concept can be applied to other body parts as well. For example, chest, if your chest is tight and constantly stretching, it does nothing for you. That just may mean that your muscles of your upper back are weak. And because of that, you're always hunched over. And once you start working on those muscles, you realize, okay, now your posture is better, you're more upright. And so your chest isn't as tight anymore. So there's things like that that you should be aware of. Stretching isn't the end all be all. It's not the like the magic cure for any pain or anything like that. It's just another tool to use. Okay, so be aware of that. And I think that's it that I have for you today. So hopefully this helps you. And obviously, there's plenty of other stretches out there. These are some of the ones that I like, that I prefer, and I do on a daily basis. But if they don't work for you, feel free to go on YouTube and find other stretches. There's tons of trainers and tons of physical therapists out there with really great content. And I think you'll be able to find something that helps you out. But thank you for watching this, and I hope this helps.